Well, hello and thank you for joining us today. Welcome. Sorry for the little delay. We'll just give you time after. And as usual, this is the highlight of our week. We are humbled and we are really thankful that you guys joined us. And sorry, I was just like tweaking something. Are you guys ready? Let's do this. I love your choices. Jen, how are you, love?
Hi, I'm fantastic. I'm so looking forward to today to see everyone's work. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we have a lot of things that we want to talk about. But before that, this is our seventh collection of paintings. We've done six so far. We started the year with the toaster, Kamala Harris portraits, our pillows, the clouds, and we went to the clown chic and the self-portrait blindfolded, and we just want to make sure that we mention those because they're available, and we know that some of you guys are still working or tweaking or finishing. We saw Darlene uploading her final picture of the clown chic, and and also she's been working on the Kamala Harris portrait. So know that they're there, and we're trying to make an effort to um, remember and also make sure that we check in the work that we've done so it doesn't drift away unfinished. And then we reach the end of the year, and then we have a bunch of like incomplete work. So let's get started. I am gonna switch the view. I decided to go with this. So this will be in a way a little bit similar to what we did with the Copyist webinar months and months ago, in which we got inspired by people who had no access to art school but had the drive and the desire to learn how to paint. And it's something that it's now not considered high art, I guess, but we have special feeling I don't know about this. So I'm not going to go into details because we have the presentation and we hope that you watch the video. But first things first, uh, it's very challenging. As much as you think working off of a photograph, it's difficult. One of the things we learned when we did the Copyist webinar is realize how complex and challenging, how much more complex and challenging it is to um, use a painting as an image source. So I just want to make sure that I say this, not just because I want to put any pressure on myself, but precisely the opposite. The fact that I know that this is much more complex than just using a photograph, even though there's less detail. So I'm just going to be kinder with myself. We're coming off the webinar of the Clown Chic, in which we encourage ourselves to do more of a almost like an assemblage of brushstrokes. So I'm going to carry that energy towards this. I know that I'll have to make a lot of translations on my own, that I'll have to make some intuitive decisions, that things will be different and changed. So don't feel like because I'm using the word copyist, we have to um, rate the success or failure of our results based on how close it is to the painting. By all means, please. So let's get some perspective, and also be kind let's be kind to ourselves. The first challenge is that all the cropping that we did has a different format. I'm pretty sure 100% than the format that we're using. Let me start with the format. I'm using 12 by 16. It's a little bit larger than I would recommend, just because it will take more time. But for the purposes of the webinar, it's a little bit better. You can see more of the detail. So it's a rectangle, and it's oriented in a portrait orientation. So I made a copy, and I decided to challenge myself. I've been reading a lot about taking risks and how important it is to take risks when we paint, and also to um, be brave and embrace our vulnerabilities. So as I will explain with along this webinar, I have an issue with red and faces, and I'll just tap into that later. But there's something about that color. It's red is my favorite color. It's still my favorite color. But when it comes to adding red or on or around faces, I just yeah, I just have um, a little bit of a Marnie syndrome. I don't know if you guys watched the movie Marnie, but it's one of my favorite movies by Hitchcock. Although he's not, he's on our shit list a little bit, but I think that movie is amazing, at least on mine. Anyhow, but I just decided, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna use red and warm colors and on a face and around a face, and let's see what happens. So reformatting is the number one challenge right here. Start using your potato shapes and your scaffolding or your lines. Yeah, that will be my challenge. So I just place this side by side, and two things, apart from recognizing that you'll have to reformat, recognize that there are a couple of compositional elements that I will always mention every single time we start that you have and you must consider. Number one, it's how many focal points are you're going to add. And with the portrait, since we've done two already, we talked about it's a little bit easier to be clear or clarify how many focal points you want, because we were very specific in cropping the images, so it was only the head and the shoulders. So on the same or on this sense or in the same path, uh, um, his portraits have a lot of like flat backgrounds. Essentially, he wasn't interested in bringing anything that contextualized the figures. So yeah, making sure that that facilitates, so there's no focal point on the background, and everything else happens on the figure. So, but the second compositional element that perhaps it's more important here is movement. And we talked about movement, not about how the illusion of things moving or in the painting, but how much space you leave around the focal point or the focal points, between the focal points and the edges of the format. So the viewer has space to wander around, to have or exercise some visual flow that will help retain his attention, or their attention, I should say, and make sure that instead of like spending half a second looking at our painting, they spend a little bit closer to 1 second. The attention span of the viewers is very limited, and we want to make sure that we work finding ways to retain more of the viewer's attention. So giving it enough movement, enough space is a good idea. Having said that, Barclay L. Hendricks was famous. I shouldn't say was famous. What we observed on his paintings is that sometimes he used a very interesting cropping in which certain elements were off the canvas, or the head was off the canvas, or not off the canvas, but cropped along the edges of the canvas, sometimes the feet. So it was very interesting because some of those paintings, or his paintings, do not follow this traditional compositional rules. So just wanted to mention that. We always say, learn the ropes before you cut the ties, or whatever that expression, I just came up with that expression, learn the ropes, then come up with your own rules. So first things first, I'm just gonna determine the height, and perhaps I'll bring a little bit of the lines that I have cropped along the edges, just because I wanna make sure that I determine how much space, how much movement. And the idea of movement, again, it's related to the viewer's eye having enough space to define, wander around. The focal points have space, not being interrupted. Anything that it interrupts the flow decreases the amount of time that someone spends on a painting. That's a theory that I just came up with. So after that, what I'll do is just a basic potato shape. I call it a potato shape just because it's not defined. And the function of it is to allow me to find out where and how big what I'm going to paint is compared to the format. So I'm at the beginning stages of sketching. These are the stages in which reformatting and arranging are taking place. These are not the stages in which I sort of like start recreating details and stuff like that. So very important, reformatting comes even before laying any lines. So depending on what you have, you may be able to use what I'm going to use. It's a paintbrush because, all right, let me just, yeah, I think that's okay. So the more we are painting, the more we are learning about painters in art history, the more movements we are discovering. We realize that there's not a single school of realism, that the word realism doesn't categorize a single thing. There have been many realisms throughout the history of art, and especially in the 20th century, we have been studying about how different groups of people understood realism in different ways. So realism is not mimicking something only. It means more than that. And we are finding that sometimes just being true to our own level of experience with painting gives more authentic results than trying to completely match absolutely everything we see. In other words, I feel like, in my opinion, I'm trying to be less concerned about the fact that the sketch may look almost like traced, because that's the idea behind a lot of painting exercises. You trace the sketch and then you paint over. I'm much more interested in those quote unquote mistakes or errors or things that are off or awkward or weird. I find that gives really soul to the painting. So that's why I'm not super concerned about how and where things fall. And I invite you to reconsider what and how you define realism, because it's not just the exact replication of whatever's in front of us. It's more than that. So after the potato shape, which I think I'm okay with, perhaps I should just measure things inside. I think that's okay. It's a little bigger, but I'm just gonna keep it like that. This is a little narrower, so maybe I'm just gonna shave it from this end. Maybe I'll shave it from this end. Again, I'm not super concerned about things being perfectly proportionate. This is a little higher. So I'm still concentrated on silhouette, and I'm going to tell you something. If you are already in structural lines, it's going to be much harder to make changes. So I invite you to consider or to slow down the process here, because it's much easier to measure, compare, align, evaluate, and find out if things are integrated or related to each other when you have only a silhouette than when you start having tons of lines inside. So just have that in mind. yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And I was just reading more things about Barkley. Um, I feel like it's one of those painters that, well, he's not very well known. It's still by the mainstream, and for many reasons, obviously. But he has been such an important, influential painter, not only in contemporary Black artists and painters, but I feel like in American culture, if you ask me. But at the same time, I feel like he's been always put in this niche. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I feel like the language that has been applied to describe him, I personally feel that it has a certain racial bias almost. I'll talk more about this, but as I was looking, and you can go back to the Google folder and see the paintings after I'm going to mention this. There's a sense of royalty on these images. There's something majestic and elegant. I was trying to find words that would describe the Van Dycks and the Velasquez: royalty, nobility, class, elegance, and then apply them to his work. And you can, I mean, feel free, you can check and see how there's this regal energy, there's this admiration, there's this elevation of the figure, and that feels very much like royalty. Well, I'll give you $100 for every article you find about Barkley that mentions the word royalty. I yeah yeah I can sign any documents because you're not going to see that. Um, all right, let me just kind of like introduce or go into the next step. So you notice what I've been doing is molding. I pretend that this potato shape, that this silhouette, it's a sculpting wire, a sculpting wire. And what I do with the sculpting wire is use my hands on the charcoal to mold it, bend it. It's very malleable. So I can just create curvatures, breaking points. I can create arches, angles, inclinations. So I find this very enjoyable and satisfying to go along the potato shape, use my observation the best I can, and yeah, and mold that sculpting wire. So I'm gonna go to the next stage, and by all means, I think we're good with time. So just know that with portraiture, the sketching stage takes a little bit longer because we are inclined to spend a little bit more time finding relationships between the things that we do on a face. So three main structural lines. Let's start here. Number one is the hairline. By our experience, that's how we have identified this. And I haven't seen this in any manuals or books, but it's from our own harvest. Hairline, chin and jawline, and neckline if the person's wearing clothes. So identify those things. Why those three structural lines? Because they are the most continuous and the ones that break up the main potato shape or main silhouette into clear fragments. We chose them not at random, but just because they clearly cut, fragment, break up, deconstruct that main shape. In my case, because the person is wearing a hat, so what I'm going to do is create that line. It's a little bit less continuous. I have a lot of lost edges, and I'm really excited about that. So in one of the articles, I'm going to do the jaw. And I'm just going to do on the neckline. I think I have a few necklines here. I have a few. I have the turtleneck, and I also have the jacket. So I'm going to take an opportunity to break down, and again, this idea of deconstructing that potato shape, break it down into this several layers. Okay, so I think I'm okay with that. I know that this is just gonna be the beginning, but I'm gonna go for it. So also what I was trying to do, what we were trying to do also researching about his work is finding out what his process looked like. He was very much a traditionalist, if you ask us, in the sense of using figuration in a very Baroque way, with light being important in the atmosphere, realism, skin tones, and all that. So he was also a photographer, and he took a bunch of photographs, and we couldn't certify this information, but we found mentions about how he used photographs of his subjects to create the paintings. And I feel like that would be important to know, because in another piece, we found that he did at some point, about 6 paintings a year. So these are like really large format paintings, some of them life size, but some of them that are not, it's still like large canvases. It seems like really a very productive way of a very productive way of spending a year. 6 paintings per year. So because of the amount of time, we think that he did use photographs of his subjects as the image source. It would be interesting to find out, but exactly. Maybe Jen, I don't know if you can find anything but about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely look. It reminds me, Julio, you saying that 6 large format paintings in a year, how that's super productive. Remember that book that we read for book club, um, where it was fiction, but the story was about this woman whose art studio burned down, and then she had to remake all of her
Oh yeah,
paintings. And she did it. She was supposed to do it over the summer, but ended up having to do it in like a week.
yeah,
and, and it was, I don't know, I can't remember how many it was, but it was at least 6
right.
paintings,
Yeah, I
and they
think it
were
was 6.
humongous. Yeah.
Big like me.
Think like me.
Big.
Yes, yes, of course, Barbara. All I could
Oh,
think of was her other book, I'll Eat When I'm Dead, which I read as well. It's about the fashion industry.
she reached out to me and she said if she could buy um, my portrait for the show. Remember we did the,
Yes, of course.
yeah, I think that was an amazing
Yeah.
show.
Oh my gosh, everyone's paintings. I think everyone on this webinar participated in
Yeah,
that show, and the paintings were incredible. That
yeah,
feels like the last thing we
I
did.
know.
Oh
So, so
God.
sad.
It is. I miss that. Oh,
Yeah,
the
we have
free
to reach out
hand.
because that deck, the pool deck, I was thinking maybe, I don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
situation is, but maybe we could
Yeah.
just paint there.
Yeah. Or yeah, they're at the top of the ace again, maybe.
Yeah, that I think we need to reach out to them too.
Yeah.
That feels like we could do that. I'm ready.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, yeah, if you can find out, because I think process, because when you, what we read about, him, it was all about cool and a cool style. And we feel like the usage of cool, I was kind of like debating in my twisted mind. It wasn't the Frank Sinatra cool that kind of like people refer to. I just feel like some of the adjectives and overtones, uh, I mean, even I wouldn't say recently, because I feel like we've grown a lot as a society, at least some intellectuals. And the article that came out was in December about the cell of the Sotheby's. But if you just go back before last year, there is this niche, the cool. It's not the same Frank Sinatra cool. Let me just tell you. So although, and by the few interviews that I watch of him, I don't think, I don't know. I don't know if, from a painter's point of view, if that was his intention. All right, so yeah, let me just focus. So I did the structural lines, and let's go back inside to do the keystone or the axis. There are different approaches here, and it just depends on your view and the orientation. I like to focus on the keystone. The keystone is essentially or consists of 4 points that are located in the confluence of the vertical axis that separates a face half vertically, and then the eye level. And those 4 points are the 2 tear ducts and the 2 eyebrow heads. So what I do sometimes is I analyze that, and then I just place it. So I think that's okay. So these are the keystones, but at the same time, I think I'm gonna corroborate or test by just doing the axis line. I think it's not a bad idea, actually. Why is this so fundamental and important? Because if we don't compare the position of the eyes and the mouth and the nose with something else in the painting or the sketch, I'm sorry, we will move and drag everything to the middle, to the dead center of whatever silhouette we have. It's just so amazing how our brain refuses to break that habit that we pick up when we're young. And it's one of the hardest habits to lose, to cut loose. And it's the fact that we always drag everything in the middle of the face. There's always an orientation. Sometimes, yes, it's like kind of like facing forward. But, and some of the images that you chose, by the way, the figure is facing forward. But I feel like that's something very important, and I just want to check it. And I think that's okay. Yeah, I think that's okay, approximately. So again, just going to go back to this idea of being kind to myself. And then what? So this is the axis line, and then the trapezoid keystone connecting 4 points, the 2 tear ducts and the 2 eyebrow heads. This is actually a good practice that we've done back-to-back 3 portraits. So after that, starting with, well, let me just kind of like do it properly. Eyebrows first. Eyebrows first. They're the most architectural and graphic elements. And because they're so architectural, we can compare the eyebrows with the edges of our silhouette. So that's why this is so good to do first. Not only I can check the height, but this is what I'm looking for, the distance between the tail of the eyebrow and the sideburn or the temple on the face. Because we make the eyebrows really tiny. First of all, we start with the eyes, we make them tiny, and then we just do the eyebrows based on the eyes. We completely forget about the format of the face. Format, I'm gonna use this word the exact same way that I used it to define the format of our painting. So it's the space that defines the face. So eyebrows first, starting with the head, and then I'm hatching the eyebrow, and I'm just hatching it following the direction of the hair. And then I see where it ends and how far it is from the actual silhouette. After that, then I can just go down, start with the tear duct. And then what I do is the shape of the eye, the eye line. And I realized that the eye line here, eye line, you have to understand that there are as many possibilities with the shape of the eye line as there are faces and orientations. The eye line, the eye line is not completely horizontal unless it is, and it has a tilt. It may have a tilt. We need to observe exactly how that eye line, how it starts and how it ends, and between the 2 corners. if it's tilting one way or the other. Because we tend to make eyes very Egyptian-like, which I should say, in defense of the Egyptian artists, they were amazing at painting faces. Proof to that, as you guys know, is how realistic the death masks were when they buried their important people. Those are paintings that they feel very contemporary. And then we look at um, the writings and the symbolism, and I feel like that was there were symbols, there were designs. So we think like artistically they were not advanced because of that geoglyphic, I think that's the word, aspect of their representation. But that was not everything. That was just the writing. So it was simplified, and it just had a specific function to communicate a message. They were very good at sculpture and painting, um, very realistic. All right, so I also am learning that the eyes have like different size, so that's very important. And I'm just gonna do the iris just because position of the iris, always very important. I know that I'll have to check a few times. The fold of the upper lid, such a very interesting um, element. All right, I think I'm okay. Just gonna continue. Maybe this is a little bit separated, but bottom of the nose next. And how do I do the bottom of the nose? I don't listen to my brain. My brain wants to do what it's accustomed to do, wired to do, which is make the noses very long. So I'm going to look at things on the periphery. So, for example, the head ends on the cheekbone. It's a little bit lower than the cheekbone. So I'm just going to look at the head, and it's a little bit lower. So yeah, it's much higher. The bottom of the nose, it's much higher than I would have done. So I tend to do a little bit the shapes of the nostril if I see it, because the most important thing, I think so, it's how low it is. Okay, yeah. Nostrils, make a vertical alignment and see how they are aligned with the eyes. So again, I'm not trusting my brain. I'm just trying to establish alignments between what I have. Horizontal alignments, relying on things outside that I see or I recognize on the image source, relying on vertical alignments and see how things are aligned with what I've already done. It's not a guarantee, sorry, it's not a guarantee, but I feel like I'm much better off trying to bring some sort of like order or relationships between the things that I see than kind of like doing it point blank. All right, I'm gonna do the shading later, but the mouth, same thing. So the mouth is definitely something important, just because perhaps we should make sure that we realize that axis line, because the mouth, first thing that I do is the line between the lips. And I see that the line between the lips is aligned with the coat. Okay, so that gives me a little bit, and it goes outside of the nostril, but first of all, the line between the lips, because it's never straight. We have like tons of muscles in that area. And then this is aligned with this iris. It's definitely longer. Okay, so line between the lips, and then I'm gonna start shading the rest. I tend not to do like a really strong outline on the lips because I don't want it to be super flat. And in this case, because they're protruding, whatever, protruding, right? There are two R's there. Oh my gosh, outside of the skin. So I just want to make sure that I understand if there's any shadow underneath the bottom lip, which there is. All right, then the crease of the chin. There's a separation between the chin and the bottom lip. I think I'm okay with what I've done so far. The line of the neck where it starts, now I realize that it's a little bit less than what I did. And I think I'm ready for shading. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm happy with what I've done so far. It doesn't have to feel like super accomplished or realistic, and for sure, the likeness, it's at the bottom of my list of things to consider. All right, so I'm just gonna start the third or final stage of the sketch, darker to lighter, analyzing all the darks first. Just gonna give me an idea of where the light direction is in the scene. Also is gonna give me an idea of the order that I'm gonna follow with the brush strokes. There's a contemporary artist. I mean, he is now so famous. So Jen, if you want to search for, I think his name is, I'm gonna put it here, Salman. I mean, he got retrospective already at the, or not retrospective, a solo show at the Whitney. I think it's Salman Tor. I just put it there.
Okay, cool.
A contemporary
I have
artist.
that answer on the photography thing too. Whenever.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't say specifically, but I found this interesting. So it says that he studied photography when he was pursuing his MFA at Yale, and his love for photography continued throughout his life, and he rarely left home without his camera. As a portrait painter, Hendrix did not draw preparatory sketches for his work. Instead, he used a camera to record the people he chose to paint. Photography was like his sketch pad. He didn't really work from sketches, so he was constantly documenting everything around him. And because he painted what was around him, it was natural that he would use a camera in this way. Well, I thought that was super cool.
Very clear that, you know, that was, thanks, Jen. That kind of like answers a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Cool. So, talk about using photography as an image source. So I think that's important that we don't beat ourselves because we use photos and then, I mean, naturally, he took his own photos, so that's something that's important, obviously, to just keep the original aspect of the work. But yeah, I think that's okay. I'm just going by, I think that's okay. Thanks, Jen. So yeah, Salman Tor, I'm just mentioning this because he's a contemporary artist that uses a realism. And I'm inspired by his style. It's just like very loose. All right, I think I'm ready to start washing. Oh, and by the way, we did like a while ago, and Lois, I haven't posted your basketball painting yet. I will, but some of the articles mentioned that there were 3 things that Barclay L. Hendrix loved: music, basketball, and art. And he has a couple of paintings that we saw of basketballs and hoops. They're so amazing. So Jen, if you want to find a couple or one,
sure,
they're really cool. Yeah, you always think, you know, with some, well, you know, I don't know what I was gonna say, but the point is that here we are and we're studying his work, and I think his work is absolutely incredible, and that's all it matters. Um, so we sometimes we talk about Kehinde Wiley. Kehinde Wiley is one of the painters who did the official portraits of. He did the official portrait of Barack Obama, along with Amy Sherald, who did the portrait of Michelle Obama. I was lucky enough to have met Kehinde Wiley at the LACMA once when he did like a conference, and he was signing books, and I got a book, and he signed the book, and it was really nice. That was a long time ago. So now, of course, I mean, he opened, I think in Senegal, he opened this residency for artists, writers, and visual artists that it's just amazing. So, and he's so famous. But what I learned from him, or what I learned of him, is that he went to Yale. He was a Yale graduate. I think he has a PhD in painting from Yale. And I thought, of course, you know what? That's sort of like, I mean, it's not a guarantee again, but pretty much that's the highest level of achievement, educationally speaking. Well, guess what? Barclay L. Hendricks also went to Yale, and he also got um, a PhD. And I am wondering, because Kehinde Wiley also has images of uh, 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 black bodies, let's say that, black bodies in very traditional European style paintings, or he uses the traditional European style paintings with black bodies as subjects. And at that point, that's what made him famous. At that point, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. No one has ever done it. This is so clever, so original, so amazing, so whatever. And well, now I'm just looking at this stuff. And then they went to the same school. And I wonder, I mean, obviously they didn't go at the same time because Kehinde Wiley is much younger. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, I'm just making an assumption that Kehinde Wiley just kind of like learn about him. And then, you know what, I'm going to do the same, but with my own style. Because it's exactly the same concept, but much more exuberant. Kehinde Wiley's paintings, instead of like using a flat background, his backgrounds are just rich and textured and really intricate. But it's exactly the same concept. So yeah, I don't know. One of those things. We know about Kehinde Wiley, but we don't know about Barclay L. Hendricks. How about that? So, all right, ready to wash. I'm really happy, and I'm going to bring some examples of different styles, but I'm happy about the style and the discombobulation. I know that things are a little bit off, and but that's okay. I'm going to use some, I'm going to bring my hairy guys. Where are my hairy guys? So number one, number two, and then the big one. Hi. Okay, so, and by hairy guys, if you're watching us from the future, we mean like old brushes that are not getting any love because they're completely destroyed, but they're the best to do kind of like broad brush strokes. The liquids were on the email, the colors were on the email. I'm going to use the exact same thing, turpentine or mineral spirits. And I'm going to start with darker to lighter, Van Dyke brown all the way at the bottom. Yeah, and then Payne's gray on top. This is an opportunity. We're doing the staining stage. By the way, I need to find this, and Jen, you can read it, but let me see if I can find it first. Sorry, I'm gonna make a stop talking, and because I found there's this article that mentions the steps that the Flemish Flemish Renaissance painters, I think the Renaissance the steps that they use. I think there was like 10 or 13 layers, and every layer lasted 7 months. I think so. Let me just find it. I will find it. Maybe Jen, if you can help me. I don't know. It's going to be a long shot, but yeah, painting
Sure.
in the style of the Flemish or the Dutch
Okay.
painters. I think the Flemish. And there's a tutorial somewhere, written tutorial, not a video, and it explains the steps consisting of layers, and each one takes 7 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you got it. I love this salmon tour.
Ah,
Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful, you guys.
yeah,
The emotion in all of them is
yes,
stunning.
he is now he's getting up there. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
his use of color too. I mean, there's just so
Yeah,
much to talk about.
he says he paints by memory. I don't believe it, but
Right.
talked about that. But yeah, I like the looseness and the way he paints.
So
Like,
loose. Talk about movement. Yeah.
right. Okay, so I am just doing darker to lighter, washing. Don't worry about like losing. Don't worry about losing definition. It's okay. We'll bring it back. It's going to give us an opportunity to actually redraw it in a better location than what we have right now. Going back to what I said in the introduction, just be kind to ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. You know, we're doing our own interpretation. Embrace that vulnerable feeling of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. Um, all right, so I'm just continuing. Maybe I'll just bring a little bit of the, I'm not going to study the colors yet. This is only the step that I use to prime the paper and seal the charcoal. That's all there is. That's all there is. And I'm using a big brush, so things will get messy and that's fine. So liquid, a little bit of paint. I'm not mixing the paint too much. And there you go. So this is this is what's gonna be, and that's gonna be fine. Van Dyke Brown for warmer blacks. I see the light direction going this way already because there's a lot of like shadows on the back. And on this, I think I'm just going to go with burnt sienna. Burnt sienna because it has a lot of reddish notes. I'm not going to be very specific with the pattern yet. I don't want to spend time. I don't want to use up time. I'm not going to say the word waste. There's no time wasted in our process. And what I'll do instead, I'll just group everything into one single tone for now, because I know that this staining process is fundamental, is necessary to get rid of the starkness of the blank, for starters, to prime the surface so it's wet, so we can just lay more things on top. So it has a specific technical function. I prefer to work this way rather than just finishing something in one corner or one area and leaving everything else completely pristine. It takes much more time. It's much more frustrating. I get more impatient. Doesn't work for me. I think that I become more efficient if the whole format, the whole painting surface. Yeah, okay. So I have to decide which red I'm gonna bring on the background. That's gonna be also part. Got my reds, and I feel like I want to use something for now. I have my alizarin crimson, but I think I have a different red. Definitely this red doesn't have blue. It doesn't have blue. It has more yellow. I think I'm gonna go with, I have a brown pink, and that's the color that I'm gonna use for the background. We studied this color a long time ago. I think we have a tutorial, but I'm gonna bring the brown pink as the background. And time-wise, I think if I can finish my wash before the first hour, I will be content. Knowing that portraiture, the sketching time, it's a little bit longer, just because there's a little bit more measuring going on, a little bit more measuring. But yeah, right now I am on the staining or washing stage. And I think this color is okay for now, because what's important, I think there's a little bit of blue, but I'll just study the color, do a little bit of the color alchemy that I love to do when I do first notes, to find out exactly what's the composition and how can I go about that color. Uh, so because these are large, whoa, that's so different. Because these are large format paintings, the photographs don't really give you a sense of the brushstroke. And from a distance, in order to capture the entirety of the painting, everything seems very soft and very well diffused. There are very few examples of, or few chances to see photographs that are taken up close. And so when I see those close-ups of his work, I realized that the brushstrokes are visible. They're not everything is super smooth. There's transparency and there's a lot of layering. So it's very interesting because from a distance, it looks almost like hyper-realistic in a way. But from up close, you could see the his mark. It's just the brushstrokes are rough in certain areas. They're thin, they're thirsty in some parts, they're oily in others. But it's a very interesting distinction or difference. And I have never, oh yes, I have. Oh my gosh, Jen, if you can, because so one museum that you'd be surprised has Barclay L. Hendricks paintings is the National Portrait Gallery in London. They have one of his paintings in the permanent collection. Yeah, it's shocking to me, and I hope I'm right, because now I'm saying this and perhaps it's in, I don't know, in a museum like here, but they have a painting of a nude male figure sitting in a Moroccan bench. There's a lot of like tiles. The figure is off to the right, and that painting is so powerful. It's just kind of like slapped me in the face when I first saw it. And the brushstroke is the most polished brushstroke that you can imagine. So when I see, and I don't know the year that was painted, so maybe Jen, I know that's a lot on your plate, but find an image of a naked black man on a Moroccan style.
Wait, is this by
By him.
Hendrix or no? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's by him. Yeah.
This is the one that you're saying is at the portrait gallery?
National Portrait Gallery, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Who knows? Because I tend to mix things up and just give like contradicting messages, but I'm pretty sure that it's there. Okay, so I'm done with my wash. It's the first hour and I'm okay with what I accomplished. I'm actually filling up this space, gives me an idea of how much movement I have. And that's a good way or a good reason why personally, I think it's very important to wash the entire painting surface, just because you will see things differently. And anything that's left untouched or pristine uh, affects the painting much more than you think. Um, so I like to get the glare out, and that's not only me, but it's a common feeling among many painters, and then get down to the next layer. I don't know if you had any success with the um,
The Flems?
Flemish.
Yes,
Ah,
I got it. Okay, the 7 steps are, oh, I'm going to butcher this. Okay, number 1, imprimatura.
that's the article, friend.
Okay, good. Number 2, first umber layer. Number 3, second umber layer. Number 4, grayscale layer. Number 5, first color layer. Number 6, second color layer. And number 7, detailing layer. Although it makes sense.
Yeah. And is it 7 months or 7 weeks for each?
I think it's 7 weeks, but
7 weeks. Okay.
But I'm actually not quite sure. It could be more. Hold on,
All right. Well, let us know, because that's a huge difference. But I feel
there is
like...
a big difference. Hold on. Okay, I'll come back to it. Right now, I'm on the search for a naked man.
Okay. Okay, go. Yeah, it makes sense. It's so good. I love, of course, talking a little bit about art history is important, because it fertilizes our motivation and also inspiration. So I think that's crucial. But learning about the painter's process, it's sort of like hidden knowledge, because the painters are as we should, very protective of how we paint, and we don't disclose. That's why I do not buy those Laura, that was a good one.
That's right, Lau.
I shouldn't have the chat on the chat window. What I was gonna say, I don't even know. Yeah, process. It's very hidden knowledge, and that's why I'm telling you, as a painter, they have to prove it to me. I don't believe that Salman Tor and what's the other contemporary artist? Boyko something from the UK. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, they say that they paint from memory, as if painting off of a photograph, it's not as, high art enough. There's something fishy there. I don't buy it. And I do feel that there's no shame, there's no shame. There's no shame. David Hockney paints live, and he's very honest, and you see him painting and sketching live. He yeah, there's a reference there. Anyhow, I'm just going to continue, and then we'll share the images of Salman Tor. And actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea to, before you start like getting more into the first layers, I'm just going to do a refresh and then bring some images of yeah, Salman Tor. Yeah. So just so you see some of the palette, and I want you guys to focus on the faces, because they're whole scenes. Salman Tor, He's an American painter, very young. And so these are some of the, but focus on the faces. Color palettes are amazing. And he says that he paints from memory. I don't buy it. Um, as a painter, I don't buy it. But there's something really nice about the way the faces, yeah, this is a very good one. The way the faces are painted and the foreground and the ones in the background. It's not overly developed. There's something whimsical and romantic, and there's use of color. So I just feel that with this work, I'm just gonna try to be a little bit more on that. Yeah, these are just amazing photos. But yeah, this is him. His formats are very small, by the way, compared to what everyone else is doing. So he does a lot of 18 by 24s. I've seen his work in a solo show here in LA a couple of years ago. Now it's just, yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jen. You are brilliant and amazing. And the 7 steps Imprimatura is a sketch. Look at these 2 umber layers, first one and second one. Talk about using a neutral tone earth base to build or transition away from the charcoal or from the drawing or from the sketch, and just build that foundation with browns. And in addition to that, then a grayscale over it. That sounds fascinating. And you're going from browns to gray. So you have a grisaille, which was later called a monochromatic base, and then boom, 2 color layers. We talk about second notes and third notes. So I think I would just mention perhaps here, it could be, or maybe first notes and second notes. Yeah, first notes and second notes. And finally, detail. What do we do? Imprimatura, which I think we need to start using because we love being fancy first. And then we go from imprimatura, boom, to number 7, detail layer, you know, and then we just hit a wall and panic. Look how much stuff there is before detail. Anyhow, so I think those are examples on the same page. Oh, is this the Browning with Umber?
I think it's one of the umbers, yeah.
Yeah, first and oh, 2 burnt sienna first, raw umber. So he uses 2 umbers, I'm guessing. And then, I mean, we don't know about the gray, and we don't know about the 2 layers of color, but yeah, I think, and the detail.
I think that's
yeah.
the detail, yeah. I think that might be the grayscale.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, cool.
And
yeah.
then I think I posted the right painting by Hendrix, but if it is the correct one, I only found it at the Tate.
Oh, the Tate. Sorry. Yes, it's at the Tate.
Okay, cool. So
right with the city, wrong museum. Boom.
That's it, yeah?
Cool. Yes. Oh, when I went into this room and I saw this, I was like, whoa. No naked. Oh, okay. and
yep. And pause.
Yeah. 1974. It's large, it's really big, and it's so stunning in the detail. It's really polished. You don't see brushstroke there. It's all smooth, highly detailed, and it just like hits you just because being the Tate, is it the Tate Britain, right? Not the Tate Modern, or the Tate Modern?
It might be the Tate Modern.
The Tate Modern.
Let me double check.
They're not, let me just put it this way, there are not many portraits, in neither of those 2 of brown skin.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. So this is, I don't know the story behind it, so it will be fascinating because it's so interesting. And the idea of fashion here, you know, of course, he's not wearing clothes, but there's this kimono or this t-shirt or this shirt that it's so interesting the way it's, and the contrast, by the way, that also hits you in the face. The contrast between the dark skin and the white upholstered chair, it's fascinating. And the expression
Yeah.
on the face.
I'm sorry, Julio.
No, go.
Sorry. I didn't realize my mic was on. It's sorry, you were correct. It is the UK Tate, the Tate Britain.
The Tate Britain. Wow, even more, oh, more white.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's right. If I'm on, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but if I'm on the tate.org.uk website, it's definitely Tate Britain, right? It's not just a collection of everything.
Actually, I'm not sure because now they have so many Tates.
Right.
The Saint Ives in Cornwall, the Tate
Mhm.
Britain and the Tate Modern, and who knows, it may be just the main site and then kind of like Mocha, and they have a
Right. Oh my
contemporary
gosh, how
thing.
confusing.
Um, yeah, but anyhow, so yeah, amazing painting. That's the only that I know of. I shamefully acknowledge, and you guys are gonna laugh because I did not go see the exhibit. You can just, yeah, you can just tell me later, scream at me. Birth of a Nation at the Broad, I think it was 2 years ago. I did not go, and there were paintings by him, I believe, in the show. So Sarah Jennings, you're probably screaming right now, but just you can just tell us all about it later. And Lois, we were not friends then. So if you have gone, if you went, please, also you can scream at us. Anyhow, let me just kind of like focus on the painting. Yeah, let me just do this. I know it was okay. It was. Sorry, yeah, I'm not perfect, you guys. I didn't go. I was possibly teaching here. That's my excuse. Okay, first notes. I'm just gonna bring the medium brushes right now. The cat tongue and a couple of medium that are a little bit younger guys. So just because I want to start bringing the thicker fluid and start applying my first notes. What are first notes? The first notes are uh, uh, color blocked areas that are more determined by edges than when we stain. When we stain, it's more of a color field, and essentially it was good that I just briefly showed the images that you, Jen, uploaded, the browns and how they were painted broadly and not really contained by shapes. On the first notes, I'm starting to block out certain areas. The edges start to emerge, but it's not specific. I'm not going into detail. It's more of like a mosaic-like, think stained glass window type of like application. Blocks of flat paint almost. So it's an opportunity to start studying the color. And that's precisely what I'm going to do. And I don't care if I only do blacks in this stage. So I'm gonna use my hack, which is the cellophane, and I'm gonna start checking the value first, and I think the temperature is a little bit warmer. When you deconstruct or study a color, start by this. You test it, retest it, and test it once more again on your palette. Spend some time studying that mixture. You can go from point A color wise to point B, I mean, color wise, from point A mixture wise to point B using different paths, depending on how limited your palette is or how broad it is. And depending on many other things, the quality of the copy, I don't know, it's just like uh, different ways to achieve the same result, mostly how limited your palette is. But what I think it's important is that we jump from um, wash to first notes um, in a rush, very impetuously, as if, you know, our life would depend on it. We just kind of like, okay, we need to start painting and I cannot stop. It's a go, 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 add. And then we just get a chunk of here, a chunk of there. We kind of like stir it a little bit and then boom, we start just kind of like dumping. So at this stage, I realized that it's Van Dyke Brown with a little bit of Payne's Gray and a little bit of gray. So what I'm inviting you to do, and because it's so wet, I don't even need the fluid. I'm inviting you to study the color. First, blend on your palette, not on your painting surface, especially at this stage. When we go to second notes and especially third notes, for sure, that makes sense. Then you blend more on the painting surface. But at this stage, I stop, I pause, and my goal, my intention is to understand how I mix colors. We always say, or we've always heard, I have a problem mixing colors. And I always found myself at a loss explaining how. And then I realized there's not one how, there are just many ways of mixing colors. What if instead of like memorizing mixtures, what I do is understand that I have to test and create many color samples on the palette. First based on value and then based on temperature before I even lay the brush on my painting surface. So that's exactly what I'm doing. This is a lost edge. So test, experiment, explore, mix. Yeah, a lot of lost edges right here. A lot of lost edges. So I'm just gonna block brushstroke direction. I'm not even thinking about it because since this is essentially based on color blocking, I just follow different directions. I'm not specifically at this stage, I'm not specifically finding one direction to go by or a method or a reason. So I'm just blocking out. I'm blocking out the darks. Darker to lighter, it's a very traditional approach. And it's not just traditional, just random. It's easier to lay lighter notes over darker layers than the other way around. It almost feels like it doesn't make sense. I'm changing some parts of the drawing already. This is a little bit lower. So take the opportunity not just to retrace what you've got, but look at it with fresh eyes and find out if there's anything that could be tweaked, molded. Remember that analogy of the sculpting wire and how it felt so good to be able to manipulate that malleability of that edge. Same applies now. Things will not be the same as we think they were. Just we have a lot of elements. We have experience right now from the very beginning up to now. We can establish more connections. So my eye is trying not only to fill the blanks. I'm not coloring only. I'm blocking and trying to see if there's anything else that I could apply. I haven't dipped my brush in the medium yet because there's so much paint, I mean, so much liquid that I feel, let me just go back here. I have enough I have enough liquid. Payne's gray right up here. Color blocking, darker first. I have some lost edges. I'm telling you, the lost and found edges categorization just changed my life. Just feel like it's so important right now. Changed my life.
Julio, can I ask a question about color matching?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about, you say that first you need to find the value and then the temperature. Is that something that one can just see, or is it something that kind of we learn over time? Like, obviously I'm not painting with you guys, but I think I would have a hard time knowing, like, is it value that I'm need
Oh,
to increase, or is it temperature that I need to change?
okay. That's such a good question. And it gives me the opportunity to explain the process a little bit better. And I'm going to be brief.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, when you start with a mixture, the mixture is never too different than the color that I want to match. So if I'm trying to match this color or the red, my base mixture is already kind of like similar or within that family. I never start
Right.
with a blue or with a yellow or with a green, which would make it so difficult to think in regards of value. So
True. Right.
starting with a base that already kind of like has a similarity, immediately when I put it on top, since it's similar in color within the same family, it's easier to see that it's darker or lighter.
Okay.
Like when Jennifer, for example, when Jennifer showed us the color samples on the table, it
Mm-hmm.
was easy to find out which one was lighter and darker, just
Mm-hmm.
because they were all red. They were all within the same. So um, starting with a mixture that's similar makes it easy to find out if you need to make it darker or lighter.
Okay. Okay. That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, so that's the only thing that would be different when I mention value first, because otherwise it would be difficult. Because if you put a red and a green, sometimes I don't know which one is darker or lighter. They're
Right.
completely opposite, and it's really hard. I have to take a picture maybe and then turn it black and white. It's not clear. But when you start with the same or a similar closer palette, then it's a little bit easier.
Right.
And
And
then mhm.
no, no, no. Yeah, you go.
Yeah, no, and then it's never like a perfect precise point. It's usually an approximation, because sometimes you make a mixture and you think, okay, this is red, I'm going to do red. And your brain says it's red, so it's fine. And then you put it, and the contrast between values, it's so brutal and so wrong.
Right.
Then you realize, okay, I need to move the needle. But it's never like, and now I match that value, because it's so the precision, it's so hard to achieve. It's always, I know that I have to change it because it's really obvious.
Right. Okay, so I guess my next question, and this could be just about practice, but like when I look at this red, like I can immediately tell that it's colder, right? That it's the temperature wise is going colder than warmer.
Yeah.
So like I immediately can see that. So why is it important to do value before temperature? Like if it's something that I can recognize off the bat,
Yeah,
why?
because value, it's easier to tweak,
Okay.
and it kind of like it's a simpler criteria. You could just
Right.
argue it's red with some blue or purple.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe that plays in your mind. It's cold, so it has to have like some sort of like blue or purple here. And
Right.
then you may do it on the palette, thinking, okay,
Right.
so then you have like a base mixture, you apply it on top, and it's easier to see first if it's lighter or darker. It's like a simpler
Right.
criteria.
Right. That makes sense.
It's
Yeah.
just a matter of how light or dark it is compared to this.
Right.
So
Okay.
it just
Got it.
feels like it's easier to adjust that first, just because of its simplicity to recognize. And then once you have with the same base you have something that feels comparable value-wise, then you can just say, okay, now that I got more or less within that range, I need to find out if it needs to be more purple or maybe a little bit of orange between, or then you can play with color, which it's a little bit more complex. That's a more refined criteria.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Because thank you. Yeah. All right. So I think, yeah, I was going for darks, and yeah, well, we'll see how far I'm gonna go, but that's okay. I'm not rushing, and I'm just gonna use some browns. So here, for example, actually, let's just do it like right now, because I think it will be fun. So I'm just gonna do the red, and let's sort of like go through the process, and let's pretend, let's find I know that it's not, well, so then why do I do it? So the queen of reds, alizarin crimson, let's start with that. Where do I have it? I just saw it. Oh, it's here. So let's start with the alizarin crimson. Okay, and then so I know it's red, so it has to be one of these. So I'm just gonna go with this red. I'm not gonna mix it right now. And then I don't know if I'm gonna put it right here. I'm gonna go over this, and when I put it on top, I know that it's way too dark, so it's much darker. So I may be close, but I need to lighten it up. So how do I lighten it up? So I think, let me bring now the cadmium red, because cadmium red is one of the lightest reds. So perhaps if I mix alizarin and cadmium, I need to find a red that's lighter, that has more white pigment perhaps in it, and I'll mix it with the alizarin crimson. So that makes the mixture a little bit lighter. It's still very dark. It's still very dark. All right, so let me bring some orange, which has also a light tone. Let me bring some orange. Mix with the alizarin crimson. Okay, so value-wise, this is a much better tone, because the alizarin alone, even with the red, it was a little bit too dark. So now that I have something that it's not way off, it's within like a acceptable or a range, then I feel like this needs blue. Let me bring some Prussian blue in it and see what happens with some orange, just because it's lighter. Prussian blue. No, it just needs a little bit. It's too orange right now. So this is such a good exercise to kind of like practice. Okay, I think I'm getting close. More alizarin crimson, because it's really warmer temperature. Yeah, let me just mix some of the pink in here. No. All right, so it's not working. I'm gonna bring some purple actually, because I feel like this needs purple. So and I'm trying to really dig deep in making colors here. So I'm gonna bring some purple because it reads orange. And I'm on the criteria of moving the needle. to find a temperature that doesn't have too much orange or needs a little bit more warmth. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do now, I'll bring some pink. No. And this could be never ending. So I'm using the same puddle to kind of like move. Oh, I think I'm getting close. I think I'm getting close. Again, some orange. Okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. I got it. And I have to be like balanced because I don't know how I'm gonna replicate this because it has a lot of colors, but there's definitely purple and orange on this red. There's definitely purple and orange. So it may be the base that it's alizarin crimson, and then there's purple and orange in there. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'll just kind of like use this first, use what I've got. And then what I'll do is try to make more color. So alizarin crimson, the purple, it's called, I need to learn this name. I don't even, dioxazine purple, and a tad of orange. That's what I'm gonna do. Ay. Okay, yeah, so that's it. So 3 colors, and that's what I'm doing. 3 colors. Alizarin crimson base, dioxazine purple, and orange to make it lighter and to give more of that warmth. Oh yeah, okay, good. I'm happy. And it's a good red. And yeah, perfect. So I think that's very good. All right, so I'm just gonna bring the bigger brush. I think I need to make more paint like this. And I don't know if that's gonna work, but I'm gonna give it a try. No, it's not gonna work. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, that's good. All right, so no cadmium red whatsoever here. And look how long it took me to sort of like identify or study or kind of like find a combination of colors. That's why it's so hard to go about by formulas. You know, you have to memorize it, and every color is so different. There's no point. So I think this gives me, of course, it helps if you have more paint, because sometimes some of the synthetic colors, and I have to admit, we work with mostly our staple palette. It's all earth-based organic pigment, and we go by it, and we feel very strongly about it. It's a very traditional color palette, very old school. But the more we learn about other colors, the more we learn about synthetic colors, Prussian blue, even the alizarin crimson. We know that those can be really helpful when you want to amp that, that color a lot more. So here, all I'm using, except the cadmium orange, the other two are synthetic colors. So that creates me a little bit more of a pungent, I think I can use that word, pungent color. Where's the alizarin crimson? I'm gonna put a lot more. And diosazine purple. And cadmium orange. An amazing tone and color that if you only use something out of the tube, you will not get. So that's why we make a distinction between raw material, which is the staple palette that we use, and the color palette that we make. when we process the raw material. There's no way. And as far as I'm concerned, on the actual canvas, this could be such a completely different red because I, this is, I downloaded this image. It's not a very big file. And the printer has its own way to process the color. I forgot to bring the orange in the mixture. The toner may be low in cyan or yellow at that point. You just don't know what you're going to get. And in a way, I just love that happens. That process makes the image really more one of a kind, the image source. So I'm not obsessed about getting the most accurate color matching from the image source, unless, of course, the ultimate way would be to stand in front of the painting and to actually paint it from life. So that's why copyist or copyism, whatever, it's so great because you have no filters. There's no process between the image and you actually see the color on the painting right in front of you. There's no manipulation, there's no toner, there's no smartphone that changes the shadows. It's you and the painting. But using Salman's Tor premise, we are reinterpreting and making our own decisions based on what we got. But yeah, I'm happy about this this background, this color. I'll just go back at it, and I have the color sample. Even if it dries, I'll go back at it. But yeah, I think that's okay. All right. Thanks, Jen. That was a great opportunity to just bring something challenging and doing it. Let's go to the skin. And actually, this could be a good way of moving towards a conclusion on our stage or our session. Because ultimately, one of the reasons why we chose this, it was to paint a different skin tone. Based on the Kamala Harris session, it was so good to discover the nuances of different skin tones. And I realized, even though, as I repeatedly said in the presentation, even though I realize it's not the same experience because we're painting someone else's reality, or we're not part of that reality. At the same time, from a painter's point of view, unless we challenge ourselves to do different skin tones, we will end up only doing the same skin tone. And this reminds me, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's this contemporary painter, he's still alive, he's probably over 100 years old, Alex Katz. And he's famous for painting, he's a figurative artist, and he paints very flat. I think they're all white, actually. And maybe, Jen, if you can find a couple or see if that's right or not, because I feel like his skin tones are always the same.
Sure.
So I don't know. I've had so much joy discovering that rose gold, I'm sorry, on Kamala Harris' skin. It was so good. I never painted it before. It felt so, so joyful that I feel like conceptually I understand what it means. I'm not trying to rewrite someone else's narrative. I know I won't be able to achieve that, and I'm not trying to. But as a painter, I find joy in discovering different tones right? So this is not, it has a little bit of coolness. I think I'm gonna bring some purple with the burnt sienna. Again, this is the part that I really enjoy. It's like cooking without a recipe. It's like cooking without a recipe. You just don't know if you're putting too much salt or too much pepper, but with this, you can always, you don't get trapped. Oh yeah, it has purple. Oh my gosh, whoa. Okay. Who would have thought that dioxazine, 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 okay. Dioxazine would be such part, this is what I'm talking about, such part of this skin tone. My gosh. Amazing. Dioxazine and burnt sienna. Amazing. Again, you know, just kind of like this thrill that I get of discovering combinations of colors that I would have never otherwise thought. Um, I just, yeah, I just love it. I just think that why do I want to not have that experience? And also, to be honest with you, there, because this is not as exciting, this theme, it's not as exciting as what we've done with past themes, and we've always tried to push the envelope. And mostly it's because thankfully it seems like we're going back to what it feels like a normal existence, or closer to a normal existence. So we can actually focus on more painterly things after 12 years of drama. Uh, but I will say this, you know, during Black History Month, so we hear about this and that, and by the time, so now what's it's the 19th, almost the 20th, yeah. By the time we get towards the end, I just feel like first comes the activists that we recognize, the politicians that change everything, and then the sports figures, and then maybe sort of like the celebrities, I don't know, or famous people, musicians, the music world. By the time the month ends, sorry, I'm being completely inappropriate. I feel like the artists, you know, they don't get their slot. You know, everyone comes before them, and I know that this is so terrible because obviously that's not the case. But I just feel like everyone comes first, you know, Martin Luther King and all that stuff, and Rosa Parks and yada, yada, yada. Okay, that's wrong. But then the visual artists that have changed and history and influenced us in many ways. And there's not enough time to recognize that. So that I wanted to make sure that we touched on this figure just because it was on the news back in December. And that's possibly the conceptual aspect, and make sure that we are aware and we make a notation and we remember when someone asks us about influences or painters that we admire or that we have studied, um, we bring up these names, you know. Sorry, that was like a lecture of the century. But I'm here enjoying the burnt sienna and the dioxazine purple like you cannot believe it. I'm gonna bring some Van Dyke Brown and just build the darks, which I probably should have done first on this part. So this would be my yeah, it would be where I'm gonna be focused on that, on building or color blocking. First notes. It's not I'm not gonna go further than first notes in this assignment, on this session. So first notes, applying them as if this was a puzzle. And the most important thing that I would say about this is that the edges are not final. I am changing things. And I also take my time studying the color to understand how to achieve it, because then I really learn what's new about it. And I think at this stage of the game, um, the work it's deserving of this attention and work. So I'm not at the stage where I kind of like whip it up and then use the same colors. I do feel like I'm making justice to my own practice by slowing down and really savoring the study of those tones, understanding, finding out what's new, what makes this or that, how can I achieve it. Um, the work on the stage that I'm at, it's deserving of that exploration. I feel like the mouth is way too low. So here we go with some kind of like changes, but I'm not gonna go there yet. So maybe some, okay, so I'm just gonna, let's not panic. Um, some purple and um, uh, Payne's gray. Oh, so yeah, there was another, before I forget, another term um, uh, that I read in one of the catalogs. I mean, there was a lot of like terms that I felt like they were racially biased, if you ask me, that they tried to put him on a niche or his work. But there was one that didn't, that I really liked. One of this pompous art critics, if I may say this, that uses a lot of really important words in order to give importance to the subject. But there was one expression that it did make it for me. Retrofitted academism. Retrofitted academism. And I thought that that did have a good, it could be applied to his work, retrofitting academic principles. I love that. Those two words together, it just really describes part, in my opinion, as a painter, part of what he used as his influence, you know, academism that he was really inspired by, and then just bringing it up to his own reality. So there you go. Sorry, I just wanted to say that because not everything was racially biased. In fact, Jen, if you want, because I think this would be important, if you go to his Wikipedia page, there was a moment in his career when he had a show in New York. He was part of a show, I think it was a group show. And there was an art critic who described the work. The show apparently was a success, a critical success, but he used some terms that Barkley found racially biased, and so much so that he made two paintings in response to that criticism. So if you can, it's on the Wikipedia page.
Okay. You want me to find the article?
No, on the paragraph on the Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
That mentions the show in New York, and then the two, I think it was one word or one expression had the verb endowed. The art critic used the word endowed and tried to bring that into an artistic term, but obviously it was just wrong. And then there was another one, another word, I forgot, but there's a paragraph there that, and then to reply to this, it's just amazing. Okay, this was 1970s, all right? And we think we're all woke now because, and all these people that complain so much about the cancel culture and stuff like that. Here's someone in the 1970s. You would read that, art criticism, and because I would read it, let me just use myself as an example. Because of my privilege, I would say, oh, well, this is a really nice critique of his work. My gosh, you know, yeah. But of course, that's not my experience. And then on the receiving end, we have Barclay L. Hendricks, and obviously recognizing 1970s that, you know what, here we go again. They're trying to put me in this, using this terminology that is misrepresenting me, and then uh, hijacking the narrative to make me look like a black painter, you know, whatever that idea of black is in someone else's mind. 1970s. And then all of a sudden here, there are some voices complaining that, oh, we cannot say this or that, when the focus should be not on us, what we can or we cannot say, but how language has been used. I mean, I'm not going to use the word weaponized, but in some sense, yes, weaponized to put everyone and every experience under the same lens, and that lens, it's held by the same people. So when I read that, and that he created those two paintings as a protest to the critique that he got, I learned about my own privilege. Anyhow,
So
Jen.
the two
Yes.
words are, yes, as you said, brilliantly endowed. And the second one is slick.
Slick.
Jesus.
How
And I'm
harmless. Slick. I don't know. I just kind of like think, but then explain what he did or read what he did in response.
well, I'm posting the two paintings that he made after them, like because of it. Hold on, I have to go back to the page. Okay, hold on.
And that's precisely, I think, in my opinion, why using the word cool, I don't know. I just feel like, again, it's not the Frank Sinatra cool that we're talking about. But yeah, the titles of those paintings have to do with the response, I think.
Laura's asking what year it was. It was 1977. So, okay, he did. Okay, 1974, Hendricks painted What's Going On, one of his best known portraits named after Marvin Gaye's single What's Going On. In 1977, Hendricks' work appeared in the exhibition For Young Realists at ACA Gallery in New York City. The show received critical acclaim, including the response of the prominent art critic Hilton Kramer, what a name, whose review focused largely on Hendricks' work. Kramer praised Hendricks but referred to his style using racist terms such as slick and called him brilliantly endowed. Hendricks painted two self-portraits in response. His first was Brilliantly Endowed Self-Portrait, 1977, a full frontal nude self-portrait in which he is wearing only sports socks and sneakers, some jewelry, glasses, and a white leather Applejack hat. In the second, Slick, 1977, also a frontal view, Hendricks depicts himself wearing a kufi. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Kufi cap, a symbol of his African American identity, and wearing a white suit. And I will.
Yeah, the Brilliantly Endowed painting. I love that painting.
It's beautiful. I know it is.
But it's like an FU, like yeah. In a very polite way. Yeah. If you ask me. Anyhow, so sorry, you guys, I'm just like kind of like going on tangents right here. I really apologize. But I'm working on the bone structure. First note still, I'm bringing some ecru because I feel like I need to build the highlights. Sorry, Jen, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't. I just turned my mic off actually.
Oh, okay. So Oh, and also there's some articles I was saying that he also worked. There were a lot of works on paper that have never been seen when he was alive. So he had some work that was never seen by anybody, and I find that interesting as well. I find that interesting as well. Okay, so I'm just focusing on darks right now, and then I feel like I need to create. I see a lot of purple, and it's just like really fascinated and very excited about bringing purple. I mean, we talk about purple and skin tones as a third note, just because um, the reason why some areas feel purple uh, under the skin, right under the epidermis, we have the capillaries, which provide blood flow underneath the skin. And sometimes the skin is thicker or thinner, and then we can see more of that warmth through the epidermis. So that's the reason why you will see always on portraits certain parts that have a little bit more of a purplish overtone. In this case, though, I just feel like that is actually, at least with the image that I'm using, that it's actually part of the skin tone. And it's not a third node that reflects the blood flow underneath. Of course, I'm just talking a little bit of nonsense because I'm using a copy. I'm not seeing the actual original. But it's a nice discovery to find out those uh, lighter, I mean, those like purple tones mixed with the alizarin crimson. I mean, I'm sorry, with the burnt sienna. I always mention as well that because we use pigments that have more of an earth base formula, there's a tendency of um, letting the yellowing of certain pigments to take over almost too much. So I've been experiencing this push to not only to recognize if the mixture becomes too yellow, or there's a slight um, yellow dominance. I wouldn't say dominance, yellowness, to counterbalance it with reds. And alizarin crimson is an excellent tone for that. Um, we talked also before, I'm going to go back to the tangent, about how important for, at least for the painters that we have studied, 20th century painters, Black painters, how representation has always been something very important. Starting with, I think I forgot the first two initials. Dubois was one of the intellectuals who engineered or proposed in the Universal Exhibition in Paris. I think it was in the early 1900s, that the American Pavilion had um, photos of Black Americans, but for the first time, they were featured in sort of like I don't know what word to say, but quotidian, mundane, or just like American things. It was revolutionary, and in fact, I was reading about Amy Sherald making her portraits with gray monochromatic values because of the inspiration of those photos. Nobody, I don't know where they are. No, I was going to say nobody knows where those photos are. Yes, they are. They exist, but they are hidden in a vault somewhere. And when I was reading the book of Romar Bearden, and how unfortunately there were some Black painters that they didn't have the chance to explore abstract expressionism and drips and abstraction with the same freedom that other painters had, because they were really trying to deal with representation, figuration, how their experience was represented. Um, Anyhow, so my point is that I'm getting a little bit too off here, but my point is that representation has and is a very important issue in um, um, communities, I would say communities, or the Black experience, more than we can imagine, more than, I mean, we take it for granted. We don't think about these issues, about how we are represented. But it is a big deal because it's been used before to create narratives that were engineered to create oppression. So naturally, um, that's why I think like his work, even if he didn't intend to, was political, because he dealt with uh, issues of representation. And it seems like when the interviews that I hear, he always says, well, I just painted what I liked, but it just goes deeper than that, you know? Right, so I'm just bringing, as you notice, whoa, okay, where did time go? I talked too much, but I'm gonna spend 3 more minutes. But hopefully this modeling, I hope you guys have gone faster than me. It's not, I'm being, it's not easy to talk and paint at the same time, but that's a cheap excuse. But I'm focused on bringing this block. I'm doing more of a pixelated work right now. So perhaps I'm transitioning a little bit more towards second notes, because this doesn't feel as blocked. But I had a moment of panic with some on the lips, and I feel like I had to push the pedal of second notes a little bit. So I brought some highs and lows here. And again, I think my reference is also that Salman-Tor painting simplification. So I had it in mind stylistically as a way of, I'm just bringing a little bit of lighter notes. Yeah, I just had that in mind. That way of rendering the figures that felt a little bit looser, just because I knew what the challenge was, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't feel too constrained. Okay, so a couple more minutes because I really want to fill the gaps. I'm really loving this purple and burnt sienna. It's just so much fun. Such a rich burnt sienna. It just takes the neutrality of the burnt sienna to the next level. It's just really, really fun. Going back, I know that I'm very repetitive. I would have never experienced this new mixture, this new sort of like formula. If did you find any Alex Katz? Are they all the same? Sorry.
Okay, I did. I went on a deep dive with Alex Katz, and you'll see in the Google Photos that there's just pages and pages and pages of pretty similar skin tone. And then I found four total of people of color.
Oh, okay.
The most surprising is that his wife, it's interesting. So his wife is Asian, and he paints her throughout her life. And it seems though I need to actually check the date before I say this, but it seems like in the beginning, her skin tone was very flat, and as he went on to paint, he found more of a like the richness within that. But it could have also been his evolution as a painter, um, or it could be the exact opposite of what I'm saying, and he could have started out with really finding all those delicious tones and colors within people's skin, and then as time went on, that thing just kind of went very flat. I'll have to check the dates on it to see what happens, but yeah, I found precisely 4 paintings that I found interesting, and the rest you'll see.
Okay. Well, thank you. I can wait. All right, I think I'm really excited. I'm gonna bring closure. It's not finished. Obviously, nothing is ever finished in painting. If you ask me, after reading and seeing and experiencing, everything is always open. But at some point, we have to close those chapters, because otherwise, it's not healthy. I'm going to conclude this first pass. And I know that all our work, I mean, I'm being pretentious here. I'm assuming that's going to be work in progress. And so we're going to take a break. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm very happy because I feel um, the idea of like bringing Salman Tor to this really helped me, because I know that the brushstroke is very loose and not overly developed. So I feel like I achieved something that makes me really happy with the realism and the translation, and at the same time a style that I feel it's more me, a little more broken and fragmented and not as super polished. So I'm really excited to continue with the rest, a few more passes, especially the articles, sartorial items, which are very important on Barclay's work. But I am delighted and excited about what I achieved with this stone. I'm thrilled and I had the most fun. Please, we'll reconvene, let's say let's just give ourselves 1:20, if that's okay. And then let's try to kind of like streamline the rest of the hour. But just give us a note if in case you will be here or not, so we can start organizing a sequence for exchanging notes and giving feedback. Drink. Well, first of all, stretch. Number 1, walk, stretch. Number 2, drink. And then, yes, upload. So use the folder, the link, and upload your progress. And if you can, so we can all exchange and take notes for our own work. It's super helpful. And I'll try to give you as much information as possible to continue the work on your own. All right, I'm going to stop right here and we'll see you at 1:20.